This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring, ring, ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, just walking out of the cinema right now. Let's see what the weather's like out there. Oh, is it raining? No, it's not raining. Okay. I'm just taking a sort of night break between movies now. Come all the way out here. Oh, it's lovely full moon. October as well, so spooky vibes. Yeah, so got the in-laws in town. It's my daughter's birthday tomorrow, so I'm kind of, they always come at this time of year, and when they're around, my services are less required at home in terms of doing the kids' bedtime and stuff. There's, a few more hands on deck, so I can get away for a very, very rare cinema trip. I think this is the first one I've done this year, or first and last, the one I've done this year while the family been in town. They did go away earlier in the year, and I squeezed in a few then. I think with one of them with you, actually. But yes, this is a very, very, very rare situation where I can actually go to the cinema. And I'm just taking advantage of that by going to see two movies, but they're not very conveniently scheduled. So I've got about 90 minutes now of just wandering about, and just watched one battle after another. The new P.T. Anderson movie. And as I'm watching it, DiCaprio and Del Toro are just knocking back Modelo after Modelo. And as I'm sat there watching it, I'm thinking, I'm so willingly product placementized in this moment right now. When this movie ends, I'm heading to the supermarket and I'm going to see if they got Modelo. Now, it's not as easy to come by here as it is in America, so we'll see, but it is a giant big Asda, so man, I'm really fucking creeping through the backwoods here. It's like I'm going from one big commercial park to another, but the trick between the two is you might as well be walking through the middle of a fucking Blair Witch Project. I wish you could see where I am right now. But yeah, so new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, kind of along with Mission Impossible, probably one of the two main movies this year that I wanted to see in the cinema. Of course, I'd love to be able to go to cinema all the time. I think you don't go as much as you used to, but you do go a hell of a lot more than me. And for you, watching this movie in the cinema last week, which I think you did, that's not too big of a deal. So be interesting to see if your opinion of it is just that bit less hyped up, because it's not so amazing for you to go to see a movie in the cinema. I like this movie quite a lot. Now, it's always the case when you watch a film by one of the great directors, that one thing is how much you might think the movie's really, really good, but then also part of you is comparing it to the amazing work that they've done elsewhere. So, I'm not going to overhype this movie. It's not I don't know if it's one of his best movies or anything like that, but he set a very high standard for himself. This was a good, fun flick. I knew nothing about it, but I think I learned, sorry if this shopping trolley noise now is going to make it hard to hear. I'll be on Snoozer's round in a second. Probably just set over. Okay, that should be a bit quieter. So yeah, I learned today that it was an adaptation of a novel. Now, I'm not a reader. I don't think you're a big reader either, but I'm certainly not a reader. So I learned that it was an adaptation of a novel by Thomas Pynchon. Now, the name is familiar. I know he's a big deal. I know he's like, one of the most celebrated authors of our time or something like that. I think he's also a recluse and people don't really know where he is or what he looks like or something. But yeah, like, I guess when you hear that the movie is an adaptation of a novel by a really great celebrated writer or whatever, even though you've like in my case, I've never read anything by that guy or I don't have any vested interest in Thomas Pynchon, there is just a bit of like, oh, all right, okay, so is this going to be like the lesser version of something that's a better thing, if that makes sense? Like sometimes it's a little bit deflating when you're, oh, it's an adaptation. All right, so there's a really good thing that came out, and then this is going to be the kind of lesser version of that thing. So that was the only piece of information I had really. I guess I also knew that DiCaprio was in it. First time that they've worked together. But I knew nothing about the plot or anything like that. So I went in completely like blank. And, early in the movie, like within the first minute, really, you've got Teyana Taylor, who's I really love her as a musician and dancer, and like she's a great presence, but she's amazing in this movie. You have her and her little posse, DiCaprio and everyone, sort of doing a heist, is that the right word, on a immigrant detention center. I'm like, oh wow, we're really topical here, and we're really like, it's an adaptation of a novel, but I don't know when the novel came out. Maybe it came out decades ago. I mean, certainly you could have, it's been relevant to make this movie for many, many decades. But yeah, it's also a very easy movie to kind of like update to the present day. So yeah, we get that like opening 20 minutes it's a long movie. It's too long, but it's a long movie, and I'm not really sure how long any given bit is. Like it feels like that bit that happens in the past, that happens like 16 years in the past, is about 20 minutes. But yeah, I'm not really sure how long it is, but that's like breakneck pace, just so high octane. Reminded me a little bit of like Safdie Brothers energy. And it was an interesting, we've certainly seen passages of movies from him, like Boogie Nights and stuff, which are incredibly high energy. But I think it's been a while. Well, I'm thinking of, I haven't actually seen his most recent prose, but his previous film, what was that called? Something Pizza or something? I can't remember. But the last one that he released that I saw was, what's it called? Phantom Thread, which is an amazing masterpiece of a movie, but a much more slower and subdued movie. So, and then before that was Inherent Vice, which I've got a feeling is by the same author. And if I'm right on that, that kind of makes sense a bit, because even though One Battle After Another is much better and much more serious, they are still both kind of zany, wacky, screwball energy movies to an extent. And he's done that before with Punch Drunk Love as well. So this movie felt like a mixture of a lot of his different stuff, but it's been I adored Phantom Thread, but that was very different energy to One Battle After Another. So for me, watching this movie was like, oh, this is the first time in a long time that I've seen and liked him doing something more like high energy, like the energy that he had in Magnolia, where it's just like constantly cross-cutting and sweeping camera and all this like crazy shit going on. The energy of Boogie Nights, which is my favorite movie by him. Hard Eight less so, but I guess he's like finding his way into that energy. And Punch Drunk is that energy. And then is the next movie There Will Be Blood? There Will Be Blood for me is like the start of like a more like reserved sort of, I don't know, it's a slower pace, it's a grander, less kind of like high energy, useful type movie. And so this was like the first time in a long time I'd seen that early P.T. Anderson energy in something that I liked. It's not as good as his early work, I would say, but it is great to see that back. And again, I don't go to the cinema much. So for me, going to the cinema and watching like the Johnny Greenwood score or the drums, like the just constant momentum, the constant drive, again, Safdie Brothers energy is such a rush. It's so fun to go see something like that in the cinema, especially for me who so rarely gets to go to the cinema. And like, I'm sat there in the seat and I'm like, oh God, it really paid off making it out to the big screen with this one. So yeah, had a really good time with it. I think it's a good use of DiCaprio in the sense of like, just on a commercial level, this movie is quite a big, epic thing with like a lot going on from a not very commercial filmmaker who I think has like generally underperformed at the box office. And he's like aligned himself with one of the last true movie stars. I'm in the beer aisle now and I'm scanning for the Modelo, but it's not forthcoming. So yeah, he's kind of given it, like aligned himself with one of the only actors that can actually like do numbers on a movie like this. I think if you made this movie with like just some like random cool indie guy that we like, it's just not possible. It's just not commercially possible to do that if you're going to try and put this much shit in your movie. So, and you know, he's a good actor. I think I wouldn't say it's like perfect casting, but DiCaprio can usually do a good job in pretty much any movie you put in, and he does a good job here now. So I liked him in it, but the rest of the cast, I guess like DiCaprio's the big, like the marquee name that gets the movie financed and everything, but the rest of the cast were like all amazing. Obviously he can pick whoever he wants for those, which is kind of a nice way of balancing the books as well, where it's like, I'm just going to like hang all of the funding, all of the box office on one name, and then like every single other actor in the movie is just going to be like perfectly cast for what I want to do. It's also rare to see such a big movie. Like, I know this isn't Transformers or something. I'm not saying it's like a blockbuster, but still like a pretty high profile, big movie that's getting like a massive push, like #1 in the box office. It's made hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide. To see a movie like that is so pro-revolutionary and so anti-government, like not just anti like fascism or authoritarianism, but like it really is like a Robin Hood for our times in a way. And although that's like the sentiment that results in this movie being popular is very widespread and constantly, you know, espoused everywhere, the actual media, like in terms of the big mainstream kind of piece of media to answer that call and like give people a bit of a fabled adventure, it's literally like a big old adventure movie, to go along with that is just hasn't really been there. And you know, sometimes you see a movie and you're like, oh, this was missing. Like this is something that like it's like as soon as it comes out, it's like, oh, of course, like you could actually be putting a movie like this out every month and it would be like a huge craze of it. But you know, he's the first person to put one out on this scale that is this kind of like fun, big adventure flick. Sean Penn was amazing. Tell you who was actually my favorite performance in it was, I don't know how I would describe him other than maybe Sean Penn's second in command, the guy who's sort of the main interrogator. He is the guy that interrogates the teenagers after the school dance. And he does various things throughout the movie. Often we see him in interrogation mode. Thought he was a phenomenal actor, but everyone is brilliant. But Sean Penn is someone who, for a long time, he was one of the most reliable actors in terms of, you see he's in a movie and you're like, okay, I'm going to get something special. And I feel like he's kind of like disappeared off into directing and making documentaries and doing kind of like indulgent projects where it's sort of like his thing, like whether he's directing or whatever. And it's been quite a while since we got let's say a Carlito's Way or something, where it's just another auteur where he has no control over it other than he's hired to act in the movie. And seeing him, like, going back to that and seeing him like tasked with that, it's almost a revelation. You're like, how come we haven't been getting, and again, like Mystic River be a good example of that as well. How come we haven't been getting a huge fucking epic, brilliant Sean Penn performance every couple of years for the past decade or so? So it's nice to see him back in full form. Yeah, it's a fun adventure movie. Like, that's the thing I keep going back to. Like, it's almost at times it reminded me of like Jumanji or something, or like Hook. You know, all of the stuff of like, I need the code words and I can't remember the code words, and then I'm running across the rooftops with the skateboarders, and that, like, that stuff could totally rub me the wrong way if it was ever so slightly differently done. And maybe even like the wrong mood, maybe like didn't go see it in the cinema, it might be different. But in this instance, I really enjoyed going on that kind of like wacky adventure. And yeah, I guess it's like cool when you see people who are this good at making movies, like Paul Thomas Anderson, like Benicio del Toro, who I every year, it reaffirms the fact that he is truly one of the best Hollywood actors of all time, like not just of his generation, but he is a god of acting. Seeing a kind of like fun, like adventure flick in these hands is so electric. There's a terrible TV show. Oh God, wish I don't remember the name of it. It's made by the dude who made Lost and The Leftovers, Lindelof, and it's a mini-series about a nun fighting an AI, but it's very similar to One Battle After Another in terms of like, now, you know, the way like One Battle After Another, you get to like a camp of revolutionaries and they're all like nuns, and then then there's like the skateboarder team, and then there's like this tunnel that we got to skate through, and you know, it's the big face-off between Sean Penn and his daughter is like in this big church, empty church room and stuff like that. But that kind of sort of very, very camp, kind of silly stuff is very much what that show is. But the contrast of seeing it done by the best filmmakers around to seeing like the kind of like not doesn't really work TV version of it it's just quite interesting to behold. And yeah, I think if I want to start like chipping away at the fun experience for me of going to see it in the cinema is like a really, really great time, right? It's like going to see Baby Driver or something. It's just like a fun time at the cinema. Now, I think I don't expect it to leave much of a lasting impression. It's a very shallow, kind of like vacuous movie. Ultimately, it's fun, you know, and it doesn't need to be anything more than that. But it's not. I don't think it's going to be like Phantom Thread or There Will Be Blood or something that's just going to be like haunting you. I'm not even sure if it will stand up to much rewatchability because it's just such a like fun thriller. But even like the car chase at the end over the hills, like I hadn't quite seen that before. That was really cool. Yeah, just like you're never other than the final 20 minutes when it is dragging and I'm like, okay, like what's gonna happen now? We foiled it down to like she's here, he's there, is he gonna reach her? Of course he's gonna reach her. Like it started to drag a bit, like at that house where the bounty hunter takes her with the guys who are like the kind of like Aryan Brotherhood guys or whatever they're gonna like. It eventually gets to a point where I'm sort of like now I'm not really sure why we're taking so long to wrap up this movie, but for the most part very, very kinetic and fun. And yeah, like, there's not really that much more to say about it because it is just such a like adrenaline ride of a movie. I found it very funny. I always find DiCaprio to be like a great comedic actor. I mean, obviously not every movie he does is comedic, but when you see him in like The Wolf of Wall Street or something where he has to get a lot of laughs, he's just very, very competent at that. As is Benicio. Like whole thing clicked. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I mean, I know you saw it last week. I haven't really mentioned it. I guess that's just like trying to keep quiet and not kind of color my first interaction with it too much, which I appreciate. But yeah, curious to know your thoughts because I know that you are There Will Be Blood fan numero uno. So yeah, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, I actually would have sent you a voice note about this had I known you would be able to go to the cinema to watch it, because I seen it day one, and sometimes I don't really like trying to recall the second end of a conversation months later. Probably now is at the very far field of what I can recall from a movie like this. Like I said, I saw it day one. It's probably 2 weeks later now, a week and a half. I don't know. So, yeah, I guess you didn't know you were going to go to the cinema either. So it wasn't because I didn't enjoy this movie. I certainly had a good time with this movie. I think it's an ultimate cinematic experience, and it's a good litmus test. I probably go to the cinema once a month, twice a month, depending on how rude audiences have been lately. I've got a very good setup at home, so there's plenty of movies I wanted to see, but just a little bit, people's cinema etiquette is really getting worse and worse. So it's putting me off going to the cinema, and the View recently hiked up their prices as well. So even with my 0.2 2-for-1, I still up paying more. So that's probably the final nail in the coffin. But something like One Battle After Another, I very much have to go. I am a massive fan of There Will Be Blood, like you said. Also a massive fan of Boogie Nights and a massive fan of Magnolia, which I have to rewatch right now. I don't remember much of it, but I just remember having such a great time with it. Phantom Thread, like quite a bit. This is from the same author as Inherent Vice. I think you mentioned that or speculated that in your voice note. And yeah, Inherent Vice is probably one of my least favorite movies of Paul Thomas Anderson. And for me, this is a similar type of vibe. And this movie was hyped up insanely for me by the reviews. Not that I read them, but just the scores. And I couldn't get away from the fact that this was being labeled Paul Thomas Anderson's best movie. And obviously, I tried to bring down that level of expectation. And I'm quite good at doing that. But at the same time, when something becomes pitted and framed in that way, it does something. So yeah, I had a very good cinema time with this movie. I liked it. I just have to make clear. It hasn't stayed with me, but the things that have stayed with me, which is why I don't want this to particularly to become a negative voice note, because because I had a very good cinema time, like I said. I go more than you, but when I'm watching a movie like this in the cinema, it doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen, this experience. You don't get it very often. And normally I get this experience from an amazing movie, like a Mad Max, movies like that. Movies that when you're in the cinema, you just get engulfed in a feeding frenzy of that type of energy. You call it kinetic. But yeah, so I had that experience, and I think this movie is it's not a great movie. It's a much lesser movie. It's a movie that I had problems with quite a lot, but it still managed to give me the experience on a pure visceral, on a pure auditory level. It's a brilliant score. And I got my cinema's worth, and that's something that I can't say very often nowadays. I left the cinema and thought, well, I'm really, really, really glad I seen that in the cinema. That was my biggest takeaway. But yeah, so I just want that to be out there before I get into what I can remember about this movie, because I'll probably sound more negative than I actually am. So first of all, Teyana Taylor is brilliant in this movie. She's a charisma machine. It's the second time I've seen her absolutely be a tour de force. She was in that movie, what's it called? 1001, where she raises this kid, which is one of my top 10 movies of that year. I can't remember what it's called, but she's phenomenal in it. And I don't really know much about her music, but I couldn't work out in that movie if she's just really, really good at acting herself and her personality, and it's just an amazing performance, and we won't get anything else like it. And then she shows up in this movie, and no, she's a brilliant actress. And you know what? She's got that type of feminine masculinity that would make her a really good action star. What's that woman's name? She was in The Mandalorian. She got cancelled by saying some comments. Steve Soderbergh built the movie around her. She's got the same type of presence, except Teyana Taylor's got epic charisma, probably on the Michael B. Jordan level, actually. So yeah, that's confirmed in this movie. But it's also a bit of a problem for this movie, because the most interesting, the most dynamic, and the most compelling character disappears after 30 minutes. Maybe it's longer, I don't know. And there's a massive Teyana Taylor size hole and vacuum for something that feels like it's missing from the rest of the movie because of it. And it's a story that never gets picked up again, and it's a character we never see again. Now, you can argue that the story was told sufficiently in the time we got, but at the same time, it's like that problem in True Romance or a movie like that, where the best thing or the best scenes have already happened in a way. Well, certainly the best character has already happened is a more better way of framing it by that point. And normally I could bank on Leo to fill that vacuum, but this is going to sound probably strange, and I am a big fan of Leonardo DiCaprio, and it's not that he's bad in this movie. He's decent. I just don't think he's a good enough actor to play this type of character. And I guess you found this funny. I didn't find it funny. I didn't find this film that funny at all. Yeah, I couldn't have thinking. God, Joaquin Phoenix, ironically, in Inherent Vice, would have killed this type of schlubby, deadbeat, inept role more than Leo. I think Leo, when Leo nukes his charisma, he doesn't really have the acting range and the character range to be compelling in the way he normally is. Even in that movie, I think, what was it called? Don't Look Up. Even though that's a comedy as well, he's still got star power in that. I'm talking about his character. Even in the Wolf of Wall Street, that's entirely built around his star power. Even going as far back as What's Eating Gilbert Grape, he just radiates something that you draw to. Now, in this, he purposely doesn't. The whole point of the character is he's inept. The whole point of the character is he isn't the man. And I feel like when that's missing from DiCaprio's range, when he doesn't have that in his arsenal, can't really think of an equivalent. But yeah, I think there's something lacking in him as an actor that I wouldn't have realized before this performance. So we have Teyana Taylor disappearing, and then we have Leonardo DiCaprio not being able to fill that void for me. Now, at the same time, he's not meant to. He's meant to be a different character, so that's fine. It was almost like a Jeff Bridges light dude from The Big Lebowski in a way. So yeah, that was a problem for me. And as much as I came to this movie for Paul Thomas Anderson, I also came for Leo, because he's one of my favorite actors. Yeah, so there's that. And so when this movie started and they go to the concentration camps, well, people would argue if they're concentration camps, that's probably too high a word for, but you know, I mean, these fucked up camps where they round up the immigrants in. I kind of got a little bit, my heart sank a bit, and I thought, oh, okay, this movie got probably the important movie rating buff because it's topical. Okay. Yeah, and I like the story. I just don't particularly like how it was told. And the tone that this movie struck, it's interesting. You seem to have found the right tone for your enjoyment. And again, like I said, I enjoyed the movie. I didn't find this movie funny. I found it too many degrees short of being serious to match the intensity of the directing and the score. And then I found it too much towards the type of satire that I don't like to be funny. I mean, for instance, in the very early scenes where Teyana Taylor's raiding that camp, and then Sean Penn gets an erection, and well, she says, "Keep it up," and that. Oh, I knew I was in trouble with the way this movie was going to be. And I feel like if you're going to go nuns with machine guns and things like that, you need to amp it up more, almost to a Mad Max type of level of absurdity. But if you're trying to just be almost stupid with the way you're doing things, and then you try and make points as well, when you're trying to be stupid funny, but also smart funny, then you ain't funny to me. And just got a little bit annoying with the Christmas society and all these type of things that was just, it's just not working for me. I just wish some of this was played just in a more humorous way or a much less humorous way, but the pitch that this hit on quite often was just, it just wasn't working for me. What else was I going to say? And yeah, it's interesting as well that you feel like this movie is a pro-revolution or whatever you said. I don't think this movie is pro-revolution at all. I think this movie is about how revolutions fail, how revolutions collapse onto themselves. I think this movie is not pro-revolution. I think it's why we can't have revolutionaries. For instance, the Teyana Taylor character, she's basically an egomaniac almost at the end. She gets off on it, literally. The revolution is about her as much as it's about an actual cause, and it gets intertwined with each other. It's an almost cult of personality type of thing where she won't stop because of her ego, and then she's very happy to sell out everybody when it suits her. And in a great scene where they all get taken out, Leonardo DiCaprio is almost like what happens to the hippies when they sell out and become family men and modernized. And there's a hopeful scene at the end, depending on how you look at it, in one way, but it's also more like a cycle of what happens. We have his daughter, who I didn't think she's particularly good either. She's fine. She basically didn't add anything to Presumed Innocent as Jake Gyllenhaal's daughter. I don't think she really added much to this movie, but she's fine. There's a scene at the very end where she is going out to a revolution or some protest march, and Leonardo DiCaprio was trying to use an iPhone. So it's almost like where a revolution starts and where a revolution ends, and how people's priorities change and nothing really gets sustained. And there's so much of that cynical nature about revolutions throughout, actually. I thought it was very, very mixed in what it was saying. For instance, there's a scene where Leonardo DiCaprio is trying to be on the phone, and you identified this as a funny scene. For me, it was just summed up one of the messages of this movie, where, and again, you saw this happening in subtle scenes early on, where, not that there's much subtle about this movie, but it's probably one of the only thing. When the early stages of the revolution, the faces start changing in the crowd, and there are a lot more type of intelligentsia, college professory type characters, and then we see that sight gag almost pay off later on when DiCaprio is on the phone and he doesn't remember the passwords, he doesn't remember anything, and meanwhile there's a whole revolution going on where these immigrants are trying to flee, and there's two characters who claim to be revolutionaries to some extent, one an X1 and one currently on the phone. It's almost like how a revolution gets turned very corporate, turns very rule-based, turns very anti what it started out to be, so much so that there's people that need help, and there's immigrants leaving the town, getting rounded up, and there's two people arguing over a definition of a password. I feel like this movie is very, very cynical about almost every aspect of revolutions, except for, say, the character of Benicio del Toro and the people who do real change on a very underground level. But that's just me. Sean Penn, you're correct. I 100% agree with you. He's brilliant. Even just how he walks, his mannerisms, how you can turn a character who is given every opportunity based on the script to be goofy. How can you give him such nuance, such conflictedness? And it's almost like we're getting a mini Daniel Plainview performance, like of epic performance from a side character. The movie isn't built around Sean Penn's character in this. Well, in a way it is, but you know what I mean? Not in the same way that Daniel Plainview. But you sure keep coming back to his journey and his plight, and just there's things going on in his head that we don't understand, that he doesn't understand, that are formulating and failing to fully form again and again. That's just going on with his performance. And I don't know how you can do that in a movie that's ultimately very light in how it goes about stuff. Like you said, it's a bit of a romp, Jumanji-esque at times, just directed by one of the best directors of all time. And yeah, and then there's a few scenes where this movie does hit the level of intensity that Paul Thomas Anderson can do. And like the scene where he's taking her DNA and she doesn't know what's going on, that's just masterfully crafted. It's basically a scene built around data lining up on a monitor, and it is just played so edge of your seat you would think you're in a car chase. That's brilliant. And speaking of car chases, it's just such a clever and brilliantly cinematic construction of the actual car chase at the end of this movie, just using geography so well. I think we talked about the geography in Rambo before, where we had a phone conversation about it before, and the recording never made it because of the connection. But we were talking about how the geography of Rambo, how he starts off in the town and he keeps going up the hill and goes up the trees, and it's on his bike, and it's constantly making use of the location. And the car chase at the end, the way those hills and goes up and down, and we get the camera positioned outside the bonnet, I suppose, where it would be. We don't get a shot of the car like you would in a video game where you need an in shot. We get the full outside camera, and we're just seeing what's over the horizon. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And that's just, some directors are so talented to come up with a way to get so much out of something on paper that would have surely been one car following another, and then DiCaprio also following. Just the way the set pieces are in that was breathtaking. So yeah, so much to admire in this movie. I hope it does well in the cinema. My friend went to see it in Singapore, and he said it was packed there. It wasn't so much packed for my screening, but I went very, very early in the day on the Friday. I hope it was packed for yours. I would rather watch 100 of these type of movies. Like you said, it's something that once it's made, you're thinking, wow, yeah, that's great, isn't it? Like that movie didn't exist before I saw this movie. It's such its own singular thing, and it's great we're still getting the type of liveliness and freshness from a director that's been doing things for over 30 years now. It's probably carrying the torch for cinema really in this type of way, now that some of Scorsese's recent stuff has been a little bit prestige in a less exciting kind of way.
Hey man, just hopped off the bus on the way home. It's just on midnight. Gorgeous, dry autumn night, full moon out. You'd hear a pin drop around here. Well, except for some cars going by. But yeah, it's funny. I think in my first voice note to you there about One Battle After Another, I mentioned the Safdie brothers a lot as like the gold standard of that kind of like propulsive, kinetic, exciting cinema experience. Since I've sent that voice note now, I've watched The Smashing Machine by Benny Safdie, and yeah, it's just a dead fish by comparison to One Battle After Another. I mean, it's not going for the Uncut Gems type of film, to be fair to it, but it's just a classic case of like what would attract a filmmaker to making this movie. It's got some good things about it. The Rock is decent. Yeah, he's good in it, but it's just a pointless movie. There's no point in making that movie. But anyway, I think with One Battle After Another, it's funny because like we both really enjoyed going to see this in the cinema. We both liked it. I think I like it more than you, but I don't think it's the best thing ever. You don't think it's bad. Like we feel fairly similar about it, but I think this will be a classic case of the points that we had quite different experiences with are just kind of inevitably going to dominate the conversation, because there's just certain things, certain experiences you had with this movie that we were just on a completely different wavelength. But I agree with a lot of what you said. Just to kind of rattle through your points there, you started off by talking about like the cinema experience and how you've kind of like stopped going to the cinema as much. Not only is it more expensive, but you've had bad experiences with cinema etiquette lately. Now, I have this weird thing where I don't know what it is, but for quite a long time now, for at least a year, maybe 2 years, like every time I go to the cinema, I get a good audience. Now, I have had bad audiences in my life, many a time, nightmare. Often bad audience is just like two people. So, it's rarely it's going to be the entire audience, but like there's definitely been a fair few movies I've gone to the cinema and I've been like, oh my God, you really fucked that movie over for me. Like it would have been so much better if I'd watched that at home, and you'd made me not want to go to the cinema again for a long time. But just in the last year or two, maybe it's the time of day I'm going, maybe it's the movies I'm picking, maybe it's when in the run I'm seeing it. But yeah, it's a shame that something like when that turns you off it, because like obviously we love movies, and you make the trip, you get out, you spend the money, and then you go there, and some people who just like it's clearly not like a special artistic experience for them. It's just like a place to go and hang out and like talk to your friends and stuff like that. Anyway, c'est la vie. I had a good audience, and I think you mentioned that the reviews, not that you would have read the reviews, but just sort of like being aware of the reception of the movie, that had that was maybe something in your head going into it. I also had a whiff of that reception. Now, I do feel like when you get these legendary filmmakers, which I'd say he's in that level now, isn't he? He's been putting out really significant films for decades at this point. What, 30 years? 30 years of like being a like marquee name in the sort of film buff world. And I think what happens when someone's reached that sort of elder statesman position is the next generation are so excited to be seeing a Paul Thomas Anderson movie as a new release that they're like, this is one of the best films ever made. This is his best film. This is the best film of the 2020s. That they get so it gets so overrated that although I knew it had very high scores, I mean, you mentioned some other movies that, like Don't Look Up, for example, that are just pretty awful movies, but like would have like stellar reception when they come out. I think, you know, people like to get excited about things, and, you know, maybe we're just a couple of old cynics, but I think people get excited about new movies coming out, and you could almost predict a year ago that it's almost like, you know, Denis Villeneuve's next movie, that will get 5-star reviews. Luca Guadagnino's, these people who are the beloved, they have to really do something massively alienating to get to not get that kind of reception. So I took it very much with a pinch of salt, and I guess I can kind of see now why this film is like quite an easy one to embrace for people, because it is just such popcorn entertainment from start to finish. It's so propulsive. It's not a phantom thread making you sort of like chew it over and contemplate it and stuff like that. It is just like a adventure caper type thing, and it's, you know, you said it's very similar to Inherent Vice, or I don't know if you said it was very similar, but you said it had some similarities. Like, definitely that's the case. Inherent Vice I didn't like at all. Like, I really didn't like it. It's the only Paul Thomas Anderson movie I've seen that I didn't like at all. But it is that same, I mean, to be honest, One Battle After Another is like a greatest hits of every style of movie he's done, but it's also an Inherent Vice type movie. And I suppose, again, that probably to some extent comes down to it being from the same source novelist. But yeah, and I figured that it must have got a bit of a review bump from being topical. But yeah, I guess I'm in this case, I'm not always have this fortitude, but in this case, I managed to sort of like not let the advanced word on the movie kind of ruin it for me. I also agree with you that Teyana Taylor being just sort of disappearing from the movie in very mysterious fashion, sort of walking into like a Mexican border office, it looks like, and then just, that's it. That's the last we're going to see of her for the whole rest of the movie. It's sort of a Chekhov's gun thing where you assume that she's coming back. I don't know if she comes back in the novel. I don't know if she comes back in a longer cut of this movie. I kind of doubt it because of the letter scene at the end, but that could also have been reshoots or something. I agree with everything you said. Like, she is a charisma machine. She is the battery of the first 20 minutes of the movie. So you take that out, her presence is missed. I obviously got more from DiCaprio than you did, although I agree with it, pretty much everything you said about him, but except for the comedy stuff, where it's like, the comedy stuff is not like a disagreement. It's just like, are you finding it funny or are you not finding it funny? I think if you're not finding the comedy in this movie funny, then you're missing the big part of it. And I can say I've been on the other side of the coin, because I didn't find the comedy in Inherent Vice funny at all. Like, I didn't find that movie remotely funny. And Inherent Vice is trying to make you laugh constantly, and it didn't make me laugh, if memory serves, ever. And this movie is trying to make you laugh constantly, and it did make me laugh constantly. So this, to me, is, like you mentioned, Big Lebowski there in your voice note. This is another Big Lebowski. I mean, the idea of this, like, starting with this explosive, revolutionary, like, we've got machine guns, we're kicking down doors, and then going like, what if this guy, after 16 years of just sitting on a couch smoking joints, had to get thrust back into the world of like trying to fucking go up against the military, and his brain is fried. Like, to me, that's just an inherently funny concept and just done very well. And it's just jam-packed full of great comedic beats, like Benicio when he's arrested after that car chase, and he's talking about how he threw the trash out the window. And I don't know, it's just the comedy was really working for me. But if it's not working for you, then you're missing a big part of the equation. And I think that's probably the biggest difference in terms of our viewing experience, because I think we had a similar experience in many regards, but because comedy is sort of arguably the backbone of the movie, if you don't have the comedy element, if that's not working for you, or it's not really registering for you, then a lot of the tonal inconsistencies that you referred to probably are even more problematic. Now, I do think that like the film's attempt to walk that line of like these wild camp concepts like the Christmas Society and the nuns with machine guns and stuff like that, and also incorporating very like much more grounded and realistic texture in the film. I think it doesn't, for me, it doesn't quite pull that off, where Inherent Vice is just a complete mess of like not themes, but like worlds and settings and characters, and like the elements that it features are just like all over the place and just aren't working for me at all. This one is like just barely held together by duct tape, but it has such a great driving momentum as a sort of action thriller type thing. It has such great performances in Sean Penn, Benicio, and DiCaprio. Like, I agree with what you're saying of that when you see him as like the sort of the big smiling charming guy in like Wolf of Wall Street, or I guess Titanic, or Blood Diamond, where he's like he's a smarmy salesperson, like he's at his best. And then when you kind of de-glamorize him, you expose that although he's a good actor, he's not a great actor. Paul Thomas Anderson is famous for making movies with Daniel Day-Lewis and Joaquin Phoenix, and that's who he's sort of going up against. Funnily enough, he was actually, I've just read today, he was apparently, Paul Thomas Anderson wanted to cast him in the Dirk Diggler role in Boogie Nights. And Boogie Nights is like one of the ultimate examples of taking someone who's an all right actor, nothing special, not a particularly good actor, but a fine, like just decent, solid actor, and like casting and directing him so well that he looks like a brilliant actor. And DiCaprio turned it down to do Titanic, and apparently says he always regretted that. I don't know how you can regret doing the movie that literally has resulted in your entire career, but anyway, c'est la vie. But yeah, no, he worked for me. And again, I think it's because the comedy was working so well for me. Now, another massive point of diversion between us is that you, like, and I don't think this is necessarily like a linchpin of my enjoyment of the film over yours, but it's a curious difference, is that you don't feel the film is pro-revolution and pro-revolutionary, whereas I feel it's like one of the most pro-revolution movies I've ever seen. The things that you're citing as being like examples of why it's not pro-revolution, to me, like, I can't fathom how that makes it not pro-revolution. Like, you're talking about how the people in the revolution are flawed, or they'll like turn on each other and stuff like that. To me, that is an example of a film not glamorizing the revolution and showing revolutionaries as flawed human individuals that are subject to like real world pressures and human psychology and human flaws and stuff like that. It doesn't in any way detract from the message of the movie to me, which is that the revolution is a vital necessity. I think the way that the status quo is portrayed and the way that the state and the kind of ruling power is portrayed in movie is in a way that like just screams, this needs to be resisted, this needs to be combated. And the way the revolutionaries are portrayed is, despite the limitations that they have as being actual real people who are like imperfect and vulnerable, which is like shown many, many times, they're still like incredibly passionate and committed to the cause. I think like a good example of that is the guy who's sort of like the, I don't know how I'd describe it, it's kind of like the intel guy from the group. He sets them up, or he sets DiCaprio up with those little devices that like when you're in proximity with another one of those devices, it plays a melody and stuff like that. So when he's interrogated, the interrogator guy threatens him and says like, we're going to come after your sister. He doesn't get into specifics, but we've seen these guys are just like brutal killers who will like literally just go in and shoot someone in the head. So he's tantamount to saying like, tell me where they are or I'm going to kill your sister. And so he tells them where they are. Like, you could read that as like, see, revolutionaries are just out for themselves. Or you could go, this guy's literally committed every waking second of his life for like decades to the cause. And I think that's what the film shows. It doesn't glamorize them to the extent of like they are William Wallace or something. Like I'm talking about William Wallace in the movie Braveheart here, not the real William Wallace. Like, it doesn't mythologize them to that kind of superhero standard, but I felt the film was, and it's so rare to see this in such a corporate landscape of media, especially when you're talking about like a big budget kind of, it's not big budget like a Marvel movie, but it is big budget. Like it's got that pomp. It's got a lot of like vehicles and set like locations and explosions and stuff. To see a movie like that that's actually genuinely going, look, there is a extreme tyranny being exercised, and that this is, again, going back to the topical nature of the film, is going increasingly a corrupt military police is being unleashed on the populace, and it's making, I feel like the film is actually making the argument that, and again, maybe this goes back to the book, that like there is value in pushing back, not just purely within the lane of politics and voting and stuff like that. That there could be value in some other form, some more direct form of conflict with that level of brutality. So yeah, I very much read it as a revolutionary film. Like I'm not saying that's its primary focus. I'm not saying that's why it exists. I think it is a comedy, thriller, adventure movie, but like, I think your takeaway of like, this is almost like an anti-revolution satire or something, absolutely was not the wavelength that I was on watching it. And I think, again, that is probably a contributing factor to how much we felt it sort of hung together, because it's, to me, that is such a resonant theme throughout the movie that if you're not sort of looking at it that way, you're sort of viewing quite a different film to what I viewed, I would say. And yeah, that's all the stuff that's come to mind. Now, I think it's, like I said, a film that we feel quite similarly about. I've watched it a few hours ago. You've watched it maybe 12 days ago. It's not left much of an impression on you. I think I kind of get the feeling that in 10 years' time, maybe we'll both have seen it one more time, if that, and we'll both be like, yeah, it's a solid movie. It's a good movie. I think I prefer, like, just going off my initial immediate reaction, I would say I prefer Punch Drunk Love, Magnolia, Phantom Thread, There Will Be Blood, and Boogie Nights. I don't know if I'm forgetting a movie. I prefer it to Hard Eight and Inherent Vice, and I haven't seen Licorice Pizza. Maybe there's one movie in there that I'm forgetting. The Master, that's the one. Good question, actually. I probably prefer The Master, but I need to revisit The Master. So it's definitely, at this point, I would say lesser Paul Thomas Anderson, but like, if a movie that exciting and that well made and that like brimful of kind of great sequences and great moments and great pieces of action, great pieces of acting and great sort of cinematic value is one of your worst movies, then you're doing something pretty right as a director. Anyway, I'm home now to my little cul-de-sac, so I'm gonna get even quieter than I've been for the rest of the voice note and wrap it up here. But yeah, glad to have caught this in the cinema and glad to have caught up with you about it.
Hey man, just heading into the office now at 6:44 a.m. It's got to that time of year now where I'm up before the sun. It's quite dark, almost completely dark really. And I woke up in that kind of tired haze where I easily could have forgot my laptop, even though I've checked my bag about 6 times. Feels like that type of days. So yeah, the comedy side of things, there's no real point to getting into because it's either funny or it is funny. The end. That's how you critically debate comedy. Did you laugh? Yeah, cool. Just with the revolution side of things, yeah, I disagree big time. I'm not saying that it's anti-revolution, to be clear. I'm saying I think it's inaccurate based on my viewing experience that it's hyping up pro-revolution, and I don't think the revolution fails because they're flawed people. This movie is caricatures and big satire swings, and I think the way it looks at characters like Teyana Taylor and the way it looks at characters like Leonardo DiCaprio, it looks at them in the same way as the Sean Penn character. They're big, over the top depictions of what certain things represent. So I think, again, this movie is neither pro or anti-revolution. I think it's critical of why revolutions fail as much as it is the white supremacist characters. It's almost saying, yeah, the reason why the Christmas Society and these people are able to do what they do because they're united in their hatred and their singular vision of the fucked up things they want to do. Whereas almost every depiction of a revolution in this movie fails. It doesn't do any good. It gets ruined, and it's almost like something's a good idea until you put people in there. And the one very positive depiction of a revolution is, if you can call it revolution, actually, it's more activism, is the community grassroots network that Benicio del Toro has set up within that community. That's very personable, that's very together, that is very aligned and compassionate in the way that probably all the best things work. Whereas we get a scene later on that Leonardo DiCaprio's daughter nearly shoots him because there's so much dogmatic, almost rhetoric in a different kind of way, that they can't even recognize each other as people anymore. They recognize just what they stand for in that moment, and then they have to talk, hey, we're people here. And I think the Benicio del Toro immigrant movement is that, it's that heart, whereas I think it's taken a big critique of every other revolutionary method. It's not saying you shouldn't swing back, it's just saying, come on guys, you have not got yourself together, you keep fucking up, all these people keep fucking up things for their own gains, and that needs to be looked at, and that needs to be taken to task in the same way that people like Sean Penn need to be. I think it's almost angry that things have got this far because revolutions have collapsed again and again and again and again. I think that's a big undercurrent of this movie. And like I said, I'm not saying that it's anti, I'm just saying it's doing the exact same thing to the umbrella of revolutions as it is everything else in this movie. And I think it's just, it can seem like it's totally a revolutionary movie because that's the character we're following, and it's almost fantasy that we want people to be fighting back in this way because things have got so bad, and there's a lot of admiration to be had from it, but it's certainly not, in my opinion, just this is what you need to be doing type of thing. This is all good. This is the way to go. I think it's putting everything under a microscope personally. But yeah, just in terms of the movies of this guy, it's probably mid for me, like, and I don't mean a mid movie, I just mean mid in the catalog of his movies, which is a really good place to be in, because I've never seen a bad movie by this guy. I think I've never seen a movie that wasn't good by this guy. Well, maybe Inherent Vice. It's not that I felt that it wasn't good, I just felt like it wasn't for me, and that might be too kind to a filmmaker, because I'm a big admirer of his, but you know, these movies where you think, well, just didn't work for me, but it could work for someone else. Funnily enough, I read just this morning that this is the first movie that he audience tested for feedback since Boogie Nights. It seems like a crazy thing for a filmmaker to do that's established as Paul. Maybe it's got something to do with the budget. Maybe it's because he was a bit nervous how audience would be. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. But yeah, I'm going into the office now, so I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a studio mandate, because if you think about it, Boogie Nights and One Battle After Another are sort of the only two films he's made where he's being given a way bigger budget than he's kind of earned, if that's, I mean, that's a weird way of putting it, but in both cases, Boogie Nights and One Battle After Another, it's a studio going, look, here's shitloads of money, even though you haven't really proven that you can deliver the box office returns for this amount of money. And it could be a studio thing saying like, but here's the clauses are this, and one of them is like, we've got to screen test this thing. If it's come from him specifically, if it's his desire to screen test it, then that is interesting, and it definitely kind of marries up with those two films being the most kind of broad in appeal, entertaining of his work, I would say. And then on the revolutionary stuff, I think, I mean, I agree with everything you said. It obviously, it is very much satirizes revolutionaries, revolutions. It, like you said, puts the flaws under the microscope. It goes into why revolutions fail time and time again. But I don't think any of that adds up to the film not being pro-revolution or pro-revolutionary. I don't think that even like takes that sentiment down 1%. I think the contrast would be if they made this film where they didn't do any of that criticism and they just made it a pure revolutionaries are perfect superheroes destined to succeed. I think that, I mean, that would be a very strange movie to make, especially from someone like Paul Thomas Anderson. I don't think, I'm not really sure what purpose that would serve, but for me, kind of showing, it's obviously not an instruction manual. I'm not saying that he's laying out something like do this. I'm saying that the sort of philosophical like value system of the film read very strongly to me as it is virtuous to be a revolutionary in whatever way, shape, or form that takes. Again, I'm not saying that the specific acts and dogmatic infrastructures that we see in this film are, or anything in this film is like, here is the way to do it. But I also think that like your appraisal of these revolutionaries as just like not accomplishing anything and failing, I just don't agree with. I think like if someone successfully pulls off like 50 revolutionary acts and then is killed or caught or something like that, I don't think they failed. I think they succeeded. I think like success isn't purely measured in you becoming like the leader of the country or something. I think it's like in any way moving the needle, in any way rescuing a few people or helping a few people, which we see like the opening 20 minutes, they're, you know, very prolific revolutionaries. And then when we cut to 16 years later, we see that some members of that outfit have been plugging away relentlessly in little acts of assisting people who are imprisoned and stuff like that. Like they're still plugging away. So I think we see almost entirely success from them, but it's just like anyone, they're going to fail. To me, it's almost like if you took a successful military campaign just to kind of show the other side, that doesn't mean that there were zero fatalities for the victorious military. It just means that they were engaged in a project that was like riddled with successes and failures, but you know, they did what they did. And I think, again, I don't think this film is going, here's why revolutions always work, or here's why revolutionaries are always sort of perfect in their thinking and the design that they're enacting. It's going, isn't it a good thing to resist tyranny? And like that's, to me, that was definitely part of the experience of watching it, and was, again, like it's like the comedy thing in a way where it's like I think having those degrees of like appreciation, or however you want to put it, those degrees of like on those particular wavelengths of the film contribute so much to the energy experience, the sort of energetic experience of watching the film, that I think that will definitely be part of the reason why we felt differently about it. Because it's more of, if you take away that very pointed, clear, specific moral intention, and you look at it more of a sort of nihilistic, like, look, both sides are just completely wrong-headed in their outlook or their thinking or whatever, then it is a bit more of a just a chaotic, like just a whole bunch of stuff happening, rather than a more heroic kind of experience. Even the dogmatic stuff, like you said at the end of the movie, the these like pedantic attention on code words and stuff has stripped away the humanity and led the girl to like not even accept that this is her father, and because he doesn't know the right words to say, and that is like, you know, maybe you could say that's like a really strong condemning of when revolutions get lost in the weeds of admin or whatever. But I think these are obviously security measures and security tools that are being put in place, and they do succeed throughout the film. They allow Willa, the young girl, to be rescued by that woman who also has the device. Ultimately, DiCaprio does prove his identity over the phone, albeit with a different methodology, but that without him being able to do that, they don't know if they're giving the secret location to a bad actor or something. So like, I think, yeah, I think generally speaking, the film is going like the intention to resist and to try and help people like under the boot of an authoritarian regime is a good one, and doing it through sort of guerrilla revolutionary means is a good thing. And that's, I think that's how all of the revolutionaries feel that way. Then you obviously get into like the fact that they're messy, chaotic, flawed human beings, and the protagonist of the film is someone who's been basically out of the game for 16 years, and now he's just like a stoner. So he's you know, an interesting point of view character to have in this kind of a film. But I felt like the film had a different philosophical opinion than you felt it had, and I think that, yeah, contributed dramatically to the experience. And I agree that the girl, she's not the best. She doesn't really hurt the movie much, but she certainly doesn't bring anything to the table in terms of, you watch the film and you're like, oh, here's the next star. Curious little behind the scenes note, she in real life is named Chase Infinity, and the name Chase Infinity, her first name is Chase, named after Nicole Kidman in Batman Forever. I think, was it Batman Forever? Yeah, it was Batman Forever. And then her second name, Infinity, is named after Buzz Lightyear's catchphrase, "To infinity and beyond." So, you know, she comes from strong film pedigree. And yeah, the 2 times I've seen her, she hasn't really done anything special. But again, she doesn't really hurt the movie too much, and whatever. The movie's just laden with like incredible charismatic performances, and at this point, Benicio is a must-see in anything. So it sounds like we both got our money's worth, so to speak. And I guess it'll be a good few years now until we get the next Paul Thomas Anderson. He's finally managed to deliver a hit at the box office, so I'm sure the next one's going to be like the least commercial movie that just like makes 10 million worldwide or something. But we'll see.
you sending me voice notes at this time of day has started a little ritual in my office on Tuesdays where I have to find a quiet corner to respond with whatever thoughts I have while I remember after listening to your message, because I don't take notes and respond to them in one of the most corporate buildings you can have. So much like you were quiet late at night, I'm going to be walking up and down a stairwell, perhaps, to get my thoughts. Just with this revolution stuff, which you quite rightly predicted that we feel fairly similar about the movie in terms of a good time, probably agree on a lot, and then there's just this point will be talked about more. I don't think you need to be. I think you can be sympathetic to something and it not meaning you're pro something, right? So I have no doubt that Paul Thomas Anderson is more sympathetic to the sentiments and the left-leaning ideologies of these people, and that fighting the bad guys, which we can all agree is the bad guys, he's 100% sympathetic to that. But I don't think that makes it pro-revolution in any way, to be honest with you. I think he's, as I said, well, I won't repeat myself, but what I will say is you're talking about the values of these people. If anything, this movie shows that the values of people change as they get older, and the values of the characters are constantly changing within this movie. The second the kid is born, the values of Leonardo DiCaprio changes. The second Teyana Taylor's character is threatened with freedom, her values change. And in the end scene, we have the values of a young upstart heading out to her protest, and the values of somebody who was involved changing. I think this is about things changing all the time and people's priorities as much as anything. And the scene you talk about at the end where it's the daughter and Leonardo DiCaprio, and they don't recognize each other. That's not a critique of admin. That's a critique of how humanity gets lost within this type of revolution and this type of dogmatism. It's not a simple case of the admin. It's that people can't see people when they're so entrenched in their hate, whether that's good hate or justified hate or non-justified hate. So all those extra things were there for me. And a lot of the same energy still existed for me as it did for you, because you're still on the side of the protagonist, as you often are, and you want them to succeed, and you want him to find his daughter, and you want the daughter to escape. So even though I interpreted things different than you, I'm still following the same journey as these characters, hoping they succeed. So I still susceptible to the manic energy and wanting them to succeed on a personal level, for sure. But yeah, great that we got a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. And yeah, well, I mean, Licorice Pizza is probably the most understated Paul Thomas Anderson movie around, to be fair. So, sorry. It's probably a contrast from Licorice Pizza to One Battle After Another is what should be studied. as much as what comes after. Anyway, heading back into the office now. Better put my corporate head on.
And Licorice Pizza is the one that I haven't seen, so I really need to get to that. Came out while I was in the midst of like having young babies and sort of just not really having the headspace to watch a movie that I had high hopes for. And again, I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, the film is definitely about how people's values, or at least what they're willing to do and what they're willing to sacrifice, and their actions are very circumstantial. They change with age, they change with the pressures on you at any given moment. And I agree that the scene at the end does show how certain, like, just raw human stuff can get lost in the shuffle, but just none of that remotely adds up to the film not being pro-revolution in my eyes. But yeah, obviously this is a difference in interpretation, which is always a good thing. I think probably 90% of movies that we watch, there isn't really room for much difference of interpretation. You just kind of watch the film and that's that. It is where it is. It's very plain for all to see. So I always appreciate a movie that has that kind of, you know, it's a conversation starter. Ultimately, it is a adventure kind of thriller. It's almost like a Run Lola Run or something in terms of how propulsive it is. But yeah, it's still got some stuff under the hood to dig into. And yeah, enjoy corporate life. I'm off work today, my daughter's birthday, so just taking it easy, or as easy as you can when you're putting on Elsa dresses for her and wrapping and unwrapping all manner of stuff. I'm gonna head to the park now, fly her new kite. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.